Hi guys and gals. Today we're going to learn how to align the slots on a table saw to the blade. My dad recently finished restoring this table saw which had been my grandfather's, and as part of learning how to use the table saw, because I've never had one, I'm learning how to align the different parts of the saw so everything is working correctly. So even if you've bought a brand new saw, it's really a good idea to go through these steps of aligning everything, and both for the sake of safety and for producing accurate cuts. So the first thing I'm going to do is check to make sure that these slots are parallel to the blade. And we're going to use that, we're going to check that using the miter gauge. It's always a good idea to keep the owner's manuals that go with your tools, because you never know when you're going to need to use them. You're also never going to know when somebody else who takes your tool later on will want to use them. So this is the owner's manual for this saw from back in 1956, Montgomery Ward. So this is a Powercraft table saw. They weren't really made by Montgomery Ward, but they were made by other manufacturers, which was common at the time. I tried to find some information out about this saw, but there's really not a lot out there. Actually, when I was looking for images of this saw, I could only find like one image of the exact same one on Google search. So it must not have been very common, or people just threw them away when they were done using them. It's only an 8-inch, so you can only put an 8-inch blade on it. Normal would be a 10-inch nowadays, but I think I'll still be able to get a lot of work out of it. So anyway, getting to checking the alignment, we can look in this, and it shows us, if you read through here, table slots must be parallel to the blade. So it gives us all the information of how to check to see if the blade is parallel to the slots, and then also how to correct it. So, and this is the technique we're going to use. So we're going to put a dowel in, clamp it against the miter gauge, and use that to check that the miter slot is parallel to the blade. And then if we need to, we can correct it by just loosening a couple bolts in the back. Okay, so I have a dowel clamped here to the miter gauge, and I've marked with some, like a Sharpie here, one of the tooth blades. So what I'm going to do is, I have this dowel so it just barely touches the side of that tooth blade. So it's going to touch right on that carbide part, right at the tip, not on the blade itself. So when we push it over to the other side, it should also just barely touch that blade. And what I see here is there's actually a very tiny gap. So it doesn't touch, it's just ever so slightly off. So I have a piece of paper here. Yeah, and I can put that between there without any binding at all. So is it a huge gap? No. I mean, it's probably less than a 32nd, maybe less than a 64th, but it is there. Now we're going to loosen up the trunnions in the back, which is going to adjust the blade, and we can tilt it one way or the other depending on what we need. And then after we get that exactly how we want, then I'm going to check this slot on the other side to make sure that that's parallel. And worst case scenario, like these slots wouldn't be parallel to each other, then I would just make sure that one of them is parallel to it, and then I would try to avoid using the other slot, or I would just do it with the understanding that it is not exactly parallel to the blade. So to adjust how the blade is aligned to the slots, all I had to do was find these little bolts underneath this trunnion. Loosen those up, and then you can wiggle it side to side just a little bit. So after about 4 tries, I finally managed to get it pretty even between the front and the back. The back, it just barely touches. And in the front, it touches a little bit more, but it's pretty darn good, really. I mean, you can't expect perfection. So it's kind of hard because you get it set without the pulley on, and you got all this weight hanging on this side. Let's take a look here. So you get it set without the pulley on, you put the pulley on, you get all this weight, and this motor is not light. So it'll pull on this side and kind of twist it a little bit. So you have to compensate for that when you're adjusting these bolts. And I think what happened was when my dad originally set this up, I bet he only tried it without the motor actually attached. So without the motor attached, it was perfectly fine with the alignment. Once you attach the motor, it twists things just a little bit. So it's one of those things where you can kind of drive yourself crazy trying to get it perfect, but this is good enough for me. I am going to check the other side to see how parallel that other slot is. So let's try that. So now checking the other miter slot, and in the front I got it to just barely grab it. Yeah. Let's rotate it to the back and really kind of grinding on it here. So that tells me, and I think my dad said something about this, was that these slots are not exactly parallel, which is a problem, but it's not a problem that's easy to fix. So it's just something I'll have to live with. One solution is just try to only use one miter slot. It's not the end of the world. I mean, really, it's probably, I don't know, less than 1/100th of an inch off. I want to know that this table saw is as accurate as I can make it. And right now I made this slot pretty accurately aligned to the blade. This slot, it's as good as it's going to get. So yeah, I'm just going to try to use this slot and make it work. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you found this informative, and if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, let me know. I'm always open to advice, so let me know in the comments below. Take care, and hope to see you next time, if there is a next time.